So, I'm going to introduce this model. We call it the six-source model. And any smart skeptic in the group should say, why six and why these six? Right? So here's my 2-minute answer. If you're going to ask somebody to change their action, change their behavior, they're going to ask themselves 2 questions. Can I do it? And will it be worth it? Right? Ability and motivation. Right? That's the backbone of this model. The ribs of the model are the sources of our motivation and ability. Some are personal, some are social, some are structural. So personal motivation sounds like I enjoy it, it's fun for me, it's a moral passion for me, it's part of my identity. Right? That's personal motivation. Personal ability sounds like knowledge, skill, strength, experience, right? Personal motivation and ability is what psychologists have studied for 100 years. The mistake we make as leaders is we assume that with enough motivation and ability at the personal level that you can overcome anything. I'd rather go with a billionaire investor Warren Buffett. One of the quotes he has that I love is, if you take a leader with an excellent reputation and put him in an industry with a less than excellent reputation, it's the industry that will maintain its reputation. Get the picture? Right? Think about it. You come in with great skills, great motivation, but now you're in a social environment where your boss, your customers, your colleagues all say, no, don't do it that way. Who's going to change? Or you arrive, you've got great motivation and ability, but the structure, right? You can't get promoted for doing that. You can't get paid for doing that. You could get punished for doing that. You're going to change. So you've got to get all 6 sources aligned. Now, I want to give an example of this from one of our clients, Newmont Mining. They have gold and silver mines all around the world, gold and copper mines all around the world. We were working with them to reduce injuries and death, right? So workplace safety, specifically focusing not on the paper cuts, but on the kinds of injuries that result in either death, dismemberment, or loss of an eye. Okay? So very focused results. As we studied the situation, it became clear that all these severe accidents were all mostly, 90% were related to moving motor vehicles. Okay? And the most common would be traffic-type accidents. They had about 8,000 people worldwide whose job it was is to drive something. Right? Maybe a light pickup truck or maybe one of those giant ore-carrying vehicles. Right? These are the people we had to work with. And the number one vital behavior, in this case, was driving at safe speeds. Now, alcohol was not an issue. These are people who were professional driving on their shift, right? Distracted driving was a big deal, right? We had to eliminate cell phones in the cab. They had to be in the trunk of the vehicle or packed away somewhere because hands-free, the data is as bad as 2 drinks, right? Just don't do it, right? So we're focusing in on speeding. And let me use the 6-source model as a diagnosis to look for why are people speeding. So we collect data, and here's some of what we find. Personal motivation. Some drivers just like to drive fast. It's why they chose the job, right? Because they like to drive fast. Others would see it as part of their professional identity. I was working with a mining group in Ghana, and a driver took me aside and said, I don't know what it's like in the US, but here in Ghana, we drivers have a patron saint. And his name is Mario Andretti, right? And we admire him because he's so fast, right? It's who they want to be, right? So that's a personal motivation problem. It turned out that wasn't alone. There was an ability problem, right? A lot of the drivers were great drivers, but they were terrible planners. They couldn't plan their day. They were so disorganized that by halfway through their shift, they were hopelessly behind. Other drivers didn't know how to say no to their boss when they said, could you add an extra stop, right? So we needed to look at that. But it wasn't just personal, it was social as well. Down at the social motivation level, some bosses were asking people to speed. Well, we had to change that. Other drivers were bragging about how fast they could go. How many of you have bragged about how fast you got from one city to another? Right? We do that. When we do that, we're influencing the people around us to speed as well. Right? But it's not just motivation, it's ability as well. Social ability, some bosses don't show up on time. So I'll use Indonesia as an example, right? I'm a driver in Indonesia, and my boss is an Australian who works in Australia and goes home once a month to see his or her family, right? They're in a meeting with their boss, And so they're late coming to the pickup where I'm driving them to the airport, and if they miss their flight, there's not another flight this week. I feel like I have to speed, right? Or it could be maintenance has my truck ready to go, but they don't tell me it's ready to go, so I get it an hour late, and now I have to speed, right? So that's where social ability comes in, other people letting me down. In terms of structural motivation, drivers were getting punished for being late, no surprise there, right? And there were no rewards for safe driving. There were all kinds of punishments for having an accident, but there were no rewards for safe driving. The focus wasn't on the behavior, it was on the result, and it needed to be on the behavior. And then finally, structural ability. The roads were full of pedestrians. I'll use an example from Ghana. In Ghana, before the mine went in, there were no roads. There were simply trails. So where did people walk? On the trails. So they land the mine there, they build 100 miles of roads so they can get the gold out, and now where do people walk? On the roads, right? And so you have to deal with that. That's a huge problem. Also, the hours are long. These are people working 12-hour shifts. So when you look at this, you say, the world is perfectly organized to create the results you're currently getting. You can't just change one thing. Problems like these, behavior problems, don't have a single root cause. They have multiple root causes. If they had a single root cause, life would be easy. But your failure is being over-determined, right? Whether you're trying to get kids to wash their hands or you're trying to get yourself to lose weight, you face obstacles in all 6 sources. And so you have to have solutions in all 6. In fact, what we've found, and published in MIT's Sloan Management Journal, is that if you include 4 sources in your solution, in combination, you're 10 times more likely to be successful than if you include just one. And yet, very few people do this.